in the lack of great progress in terms of multilateral cooperation, we're seeing a problem of industry standards being created by regions. That may be good or it may be bad. It depends on whether or not they are going to be easily globalized. And that brings us to that regionalism debate on whether or not it's a building block or a stumbling block approach. And so it could or it could not be positive. It depends on how these agreements are developed. There's also the problem of what we would call bandwidth in terms of trade negotiations. And I think that we could all differ on how important this effect would be, but it certainly exists. And that is, how much can trade negotiators really spend time doing both regional agreements and global agreements at the same time? There's obviously going to be limitations. Now, maybe in the medium term, that isn't such a problem. When Vietnam joined ASEAN, for example, it trained officials. Maybe it didn't have enough time to sort of focus on its WTO application. Officials were being trained within the ASEAN context, but certainly they were not being focused on that as much as they would otherwise. So that may be a positive effect in terms of the training, but you could see how this could be a cost in countries where we have limited human capacity within the trade ministries. And that isn't just true for ASEAN, it's true for the United States and everywhere else. We only have a certain amount of capacity to negotiate these things. So that's important as well. I think it's also important to note that in the financial area, that very frequently we need to focus on global rules. We might be doing this at the regional level, but finance tends to be very global. So there's only limited progress we could make in any regional agreement anyway. And I think if we look at the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint, for example, that is recognized as being important because what's stated in there is more on terms of financial development and these sort of things. Some mentions of cross-issuances of securities and things, but I think that most of those rules we'd have to say would be better done perhaps at a global level unless they're done very carefully at the regional level. I will not go into the debate of an ASEAN currency. As mentioned earlier, in Europe we do have problems in that regard, even though this was something, I will remind you, we were seriously talking about in 2002 when it was originally proposed by President Estrada of the Philippines. But I think that even if we wanted to go in that direction in the ASEAN case, we would have to have our eyes firmly placed on what's going on globally because ASEAN, even if it had its own currency, it would have to have its